So we're going to talk about strategies for safety and well-being at sea. Now, this is a very, very crucial segment. So I'm going to be inviting our speakers really quick on the stage. Now, to moderate this discussion, we in fact have the director for Sitara Shipping Limited, who was also the founding member of Vista India and Maritime CEO. She's also played a crucial role in promoting diversity as well as inclusion with key industry players across universities, industry bodies, shipping companies, and governments. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Ms. Sanjam Sahi. Can we have a round of applause to please welcome Ms. Sanjam Sahi Gupta? Thank you so much for joining us. Our next speaker, we have with us someone who works in the capacity of a clinical psychologist at Fleet Management, and she works actively with the seafarers to increase awareness and help seeking behavior change, supporting seafarers and as well as their families with their psychological needs. She also has experience building wellness at sea tools and works closely with the organization. We have with us Ms. Divya Nair. And up next on stage, we have with us someone whom you just heard giving us a very inspiring speech earlier. We have with us once again Ms. Emily Grevson. So I'd like to once again invite her on the stage because together with her team, she's driving cultural transformation through one team together and a journey aiming at creating a safe and inclusive workplace at sea as well as on shore. So that being said, I'm going to quickly hand over the proceedings to Ms. Sanjam Sahi Gupta. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure to be here again this year. I can barely believe a year has passed since the first Equal at Sea event. So today's Tête-à-tête is about staying afloat, strategies for safety and well-being at sea. Well, safety and well-being are not luxuries. They are necessities for those who brave the open sea. And joining me today are Amali and Divya. So in keeping with the time, we'll dive straight into the questions. So Divya, what are some of the common psychological challenges faced by individuals at sea and how can they be addressed?
Firstly, hi, and it's a pleasure to be here. So apologies for being a mood killer after all the awe-inspiring stories that you've heard. It's not always nice to speak to a psychologist because we tend to show the darker side of human behavior. And when we talk about psychological challenges at sea, seafaring has its occupational hazards. You are away from home from a very long time. There are high-risk factors that are involved. Isolation is a big thing, and there is a lot of commercial pressure. And I'm on the starters because the topic is equal at sea. I'm also going to give equal importance to men and talk how both genders are affected when it comes to psychological challenges. One thing that I noticed, and I am speaking it from a practitioner's perspective because the lack of research in this area is really poor and we really need to get on with that. One is adaptation and resilience. We also have chronic stress and burnout that builds over the years, and that somehow also has its facets of cynicism that no matter what I do, no matter how many pleas that I make, some things on board are never going to change. It is a difficult thing, and in ground reality, when on board, when I meet a lot of seafarers, yes, it's nice to talk about it in conference rooms, but when I am on the vessel, I face so many stresses consistently. That gives rise to a bit of learned helplessness. I feel helpless, and so I stop trying further and further. When both men and women face this, however, with women, it's even more a bit challenging because one, I have now tried to imbibe masculine, letting go of a traditional feminine role and looking at masculine identification that I am equal and I'm striving consistently to achieve that goal, trying to break stereotypes. Breaking stereotypes has a lot of mental pressure. It gives rise to a lot of anxiety when consistently, throughout your career, I have to prove myself. I have to talk about how difficult, how worthy I am of my skill set and I deserve to be here. So that anxiety, that pressure, and we have a concept called social identity threat, where amongst a group of people, I introduce one new, diverse kind of an individual, then there is a spotlight on that person. Anything and everything that this person does is consistently monitored, remarked upon, and valued over and over again. Being in the spotlight is very difficult. So I would hypothesize that women may tend to face higher amount of anxiety, higher amount of depression, and higher amount of learned helplessness, which leads to higher attrition rates in the industry. That I reach a stage and then I give up. Okay, no, you know what? Nothing's going to change. So these are possibly, from a practitioner's perspective, that I have been noticing in the past 3 years that I've been working.
Thank you so much, Divya. And Amali, coming to you, what are the risks and challenges faced at sea that are unique to women, vis-a-vis those that are common to all seafarers, and how do you think we can mitigate these risks?
Right, so I think that some was already answered, so I don't want to repeat that, but I do recognize. I think that for me, it's not just talking about women, it's talking about minorities. So this is not in particular for women, it's a discussion around how do minorities face challenges when they're in this environment. So yes, you know, overperforming is a thing. When you're a minority on board, you feel like you need to prove your worth every single day. I echo that. The fact that some might feel alienated on board is also can happen. So I don't want to repeat that. I echo it, and then I would just want to end on this note, which is that we know from research that minorities are in 86% larger risk of experiencing situations of misconduct, including harassment, discrimination, and bullying. So that's a fact that we need to look at. What's the second question on mitigation? Or
Yeah, how can we mitigate these risks?
Yeah. Right, it's a major question. But in reality, for the last one, when we know, as also mentioned before, we need to look it in the eye and understand this is happening and this can happen. That's the first thing. Then we need to, for me, it's extremely important that we don't go on one size fits all. We need, as a company, I can speak on the behalf of Maersk, to understand what challenges are we facing? What challenges are our seafarers facing? From a gender perspective, from a minority perspective, and then create solutions on that. So I would say that would be the only advice that I could give broadly, to understand your own situation and have the courage to look that in the eye and say, these are the challenges that we had. And I had the pleasure of doing that, I think, a month after I started in Maersk, presenting to management all the challenges that we had. Great experience. But the good thing was that they took it seriously, so that we could build a strategy that would not eliminate, but focus and hopefully reduce these situations going forward.
Thank you so much, Amali. And Divya, coming back to you, you spoke about the challenges that have been faced. So what techniques and practices do you think can be used to manage stress, loneliness, and isolation?
Well, I do not want to give a generic reply. ChatGPT and Google may give you that. Okay, meditate, relax, exercise. Coming from a psychological perspective, and one of the theories, I think, therefore I am, and I'm going to use that principle, that identify the source of stress for you. So thing is, if a person A meditates and it works for him, and he would preach, oh, you know what, meditation works, everybody should meditate. But it's not the same for everyone. Each one of us has a different style of responding to stress. One person might withdraw into himself when faced under stress. Another person may feel agitated and make impulsive, hasty decisions. So for person A, relaxation is not going to really work because he's still sort of disconnected from the people around him. In that case, I would tell him, come on, talk about it, speak about it, connect with the people around you. For other person who is agitated, their relaxation techniques might help. So identifying sources of stress is important. Where is the stress coming from, and what can I do about it? Also understanding whether the stress is one-time nature or has it been happening for a very long time. Is it repetitive? Can I find a pattern in the kind of stress that I'm facing? That means somewhere my coping skills need to be improved. If despite that, I find it struggling. I find myself struggling to deal with my stressors. That might be the time to seek professional help. And the reason we don't do that is because a lot of stigma. For men, you are not allowed to express feelings. For women, if we express feeling, that's a crime. So either gender faces a lot of trouble when it comes to seeking mental health assistance. In terms of loneliness, I find this term to be, very overused in a sense, and that's a personal opinion. Loneliness is a state of mind, and it is very subjective. Each one of us would experience loneliness in a different manner. It could be that I am not able to find worthy relationships while I'm bored. I'm not able to connect to the people on board. It does not add any value to me. It could be that I do not know what I am doing in this job. This job does not give me any value to me, and that increases my sense of loneliness. Sometimes sexual frustration can be misnamed as loneliness. I seek sexual companionship, and that makes me feel lonely. The lack of it makes me feel lonely. So there are various facets to loneliness, and each has to be explored in its own nuance to give you a perfect answer. And honestly, there aren't perfect answers. They're just diverse answers depending on person, cultural, where we come from, nationalities, so many variables that we need to consider while devising, a program that targets relaxation and well-being for seafarers on board.
Thank you, Divya. And Amali, taking off from what Divya has said, can you also elaborate on certain safety and well-being measures that could be put into place to cater to the challenges of women on board?
Yes, so I think it's extremely important that we as companies take responsibility when inviting new people into our company. And when talking about situations of misconduct that we know women are to a larger risk of, it's extremely important that we, of course, endorse a speak-up culture, but that's very easy. Living it is another thing. So the most important thing is basically that we make everybody aware, that we trust them, that we want to listen, and that we have a professional process if there is a situation. So speaking up is extremely difficult, even for me to this day it's difficult. So we as a company needs to continuously build that trust towards our employees, and it takes time, especially if we haven't had focus on it ever before, not to a great extent at least. So building that trust is absolutely important, and then we need to keep that trust, meaning if there is a complaint or a situation that we need to handle, that it's being handled fair and professionally, so that we don't lose that trust again by violating confidentiality or anything in that sphere. So handling all situations very professionally is super important, and then follow up, right? We talk about psychological safety, but what does that mean? It means that we look people in the eye afterwards as well as human beings and say, what can I do for you? What do you need? Instead of assuming what the individual is looking for. So I think that we need to build the trust of we actually do embrace the speak up culture. We have a professional system that takes care of it, and then we follow through and follow up. That's for if there is a situation of misconduct, of course.
Thank you so much, Amali. And I know we're running out of time, but quickly one question each. And Divya, maintaining good mental health at sea is extremely important. So what can be done by organizations to facilitate good mental health at sea?
One, it's great that we are now looking at mental health with a positive eye, and finally we are speaking about it. Yes, we have been drafting policies and all of that, but at the ground reality, people are still scared to speak up. There are a lot of insecurities that run through their mind, starting from, that speaking about it makes me feel weak, look weak, and my job security, if I own up to this kind of mental health issue, will I be employed again in this organization? So I would start by educating and awareness, starting from identifying what could be possibly the red flags of poor mental health on board. How do people reach out? How do people identify? On crew, there are no, experts out there. It is just the team of seafarers who are working, the crew that's working. How do they help each other? So their resilience building, their coping strategies, their ability to identify amongst each other that these are the red flags of poor mental health, or this person is slipping, and identifying it, highlighting it. And also as organizations, we support that and we ensure that we will take care of you. That's where we need to start.
Thank you, Divya and Amali. Quickly, what do you think the key components of an effective complaints response plan is at sea? I know you've spoken about how complaints should be handled effectively, but what communication protocols do you think should be established and maintained during such concerns?
Yes, for complaints handling, it's obvious that our seafarers are at sea, and therefore we need to be very mindful of the practical realities, meaning that there needs to be multiple ways of raising a complaint. It's very normal that you would reach out to someone whom you trust. That could be a crewing operator, to be very specific, because it's someone you have dialogue with. So what do? We as a company make sure that all crewing operators in Maersk have had respectful victim response, so that they can accommodate the person to the right instance. So it's not enough to say we have revised our complaint procedure and we should be fine. It's about unlocking those structural barriers. What is it that people do? And then react on that in specific. So we have run a campaign. We need to build awareness first. We need to build complaint procedures, and then we need to train. So I think that training is a very essential part of it when transforming a culture, because just on an end note, culture is, in my opinion, everything that we can't really see, but that we all agree on. So it's the hidden jokes, it's the shared understanding, it's everything that sits in the wall. And the challenge is that we can't see it, we just know it. And therefore it's so difficult to change. But unlocking the structural barriers is extremely important, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. You both have been great panelists. And to end, I'd just like to say that safety at sea is not just a slogan. It's a shared responsibility and a fundamental human right. Ensuring the well-being of seafarers is not only crucial for the maritime industry, but also for the sustainable future of our global economy. Thank you to the audience for being such good listeners. And here we end the session.
Thank you very much.